Hello. Did you know that queer people exist and have existed as long as humans have been around? Yet for most of history, they have been overlooked, silenced, and oppressed to the extent that even queer representation today makes most people go, what are these strange new concepts I need to learn to refamiliarize myself with the world? Well, fortunately, while queerness is neither new nor strange, we at The Mesh are here to help you understand. This video series is a curation of unique experiences and stories, as told by those who live these stories themselves. Welcome to. And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Queer Diaries, where we talk to members of the LGBTQIA community about their hobbies, their interests, their passions. Here with us, we have Sahara. Hi, Sahara.
Hi.
Tell us a little
Hi.
about yourself.
I'm studying English. I'm an undergraduate. Uh, I'm a trans woman. I like comic books and media set in space and movies in general. I guess that's it. There isn't much else to talk about. Yeah. Sylhet, Bangladesh. Uh,
You are a trans woman, or was that a feeling that gradually settled in over a period of time?
um, I think it's gradual. It's sort of like that. Uh, remember in the first Matrix movie, there's like a, I think it was Trinity telling you about how he feels always off, and he suddenly realizes that the feeling that something is wrong with the reality and something like
Right.
that, and there's a needle inside you, you can't figure out, and wrong with you,
Yeah.
sort of like, and when you realize that you are trans and you combat your dysphoria, sort of like the needle being gone, and that's sort of the realization, that the more I battled my dysphoria, I sort of came to the realization like that, step by step.
Right.
There isn't.
So it started with a general feeling of discomfort, and then you had struggles with dysphoria, and you gradually came to accept yourself, to accept your identity to the point where you are now, right?
Yeah.
So, what was that transitional period like? It must have been challenging to accept this new idea of yourself.
I don't. I don't think I ever had like a, I never fit in, so it wasn't that challenging to suddenly transition, because my behavior never fit into the what should we say, cis-heteronormative view of how people are supposed to behave. And so while I was changing, it was just it was more it brought more relief rather than challenge, because
Right.
it was like I was losing anything, because I didn't really have anything to lose. So the gradual changes that happened, they don't
Right.
really bring as much challenge.
Right. So you felt as an outcast to begin with, and you were struggling and you were in pain. So the realization, this knowledge of your identity, it must have provided you with some answers, right? And there can be comfort in that.
Yeah.
All right. So did any piece of media, you mentioned that you like comic books. Did any piece of media particularly help you understand or accept your identity better?
I can't really remember any specific ones, but I remember ones that made me not accept myself as much as give me the courage required to come out, I guess. Have you read Exit Stage Left, the Snagglepuss Chronicles by Mark Russell?
I have not. Please tell me about it.
So it's about this pre-established cartoon character named Snagglepuss, right? So he used to be in
Right.
Tom and Jerry or Looney Tunes type of cartoons back in the days. So Mark Russell, he reimagines Snagglepuss as a gay playwright in the McCarthy era of America. So he's being targeted by the McCarthy administration. His communist friends are being targeted by McCarthy administration, and he has a conversation with a aspiring writer in a park, and he tells that the purpose of writers is to tell people that the world is on fire, but no one should expect to be heard. You know, like, so the aspiring writer, he asks Snagglepuss that, if there is no point, like, if there is no point to it, if you can change people, why bother fighting about it? And Snagglepuss says something like, it doesn't matter whether you can win the battle, you have to fight. Some battles are need to be fought merely because they need to be fought, not because you have a chance of winning. So that was sort of the moment, I think, that I realized that I may never be accepted or legalized, but I have to go ahead with it anyway. No?
Right. That reminds me of an excellent quote by John Daniel of the band The Mountain Goats. It was something to the effect of how, there is no joy in struggle, but there is something very life affirming about struggling despite, all the suffering that we go through. I think that's
I gotta
resonant with what you just said.
I gotta
Like,
check him out.
yeah, yeah, I think you would love the Mountain Goats. They have some incredible, incredible music.
Listen to some of them.
Ah, right.
No children.
Yeah, yeah. No Children is an absolute classic. Yeah, I love the Mountain Goats. All right. You also mentioned the theme of McCarthyism. Uh, so, how would you describe your political leanings?
Uh, I'd say I'd say I'm, uh, I'd say I'm left leaning, and I think workers should own the means of product. What's it called? My brain is doing
Means
a
of
brain fart right.
production.
Means of production,
Right.
and and I'm not sure about which strain of leftism I particularly support. So right now I am
Of course.
generally in that area, but when it comes to practical uses of it, I'm not really sure yet. What's your political
Right.
view?
I would say I also lean quite heavily towards the left. I do believe that there is a massive economic inequality, and it is something that needs to be addressed one way or another because I think the way we are heading is unsustainable. Like, both economically and ecologically. So,
This was
yeah, I think I agree with a lot of leftist thinkers, leftist economists, leftist environmentalists, people who have just less leftist views on culture and media in general. So, yeah, I think we're on the same wavelength regarding that. All right, so moving on, walk us through a day in your life. What is it like from, the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed?
it's pretty normal. There isn't really much hasn't changed actually since I came out. Um, Before I came out, I was already stealth transitioning,
Right.
so uh, people already could tell that I was on cis. So the things after I came out, there wasn't really much change, and my institution and family has been fairly accepting. Um, So it has been pretty on par. It has been pretty regular.
So what do you do in a regular day other than focus on your academics?
I watch movies, read some books. That's it. I don't really. I'm not. I don't go out or anything much.
Speaking of not going out, that was actually something I was going to ask you about. So, as a trans woman living in a place which is notorious for transphobic sentiments, are there any things you have to constantly keep in mind that you have to regulate in your day-to-day behavior?
Uh, I don't really consciously regulate my day-to-day behavior right now. I think before it came out, it was more of a concern in my mind because people used to think a lot of people used to just assume even before it came out that I was a girl wearing boys' clothes because I was already transitioning. So I was already passing. So it was sort of it led to awkward situations because the country is conservative, so people used to
Yeah,
be judgmental about that. But also there are people who used to think that I'm a boy with long hair. So those times are, I think, more concerning for me. I think going out back then was I had a lot of stuff on my mind, like how should I behave, or in the public transport. If woman said to me or man said to me, it sort of felt. I used to be conscious about that, and I think before coming out, I had a hard time making friends because I was always hiding a part of myself. So when someone tried to be my friend, my mind was going, would they accept me if I came out? And what's the political views? And if I made friends with them and eventually I came out, would I lose the friendship? And a lot of stuff like that. But after coming out, it sort of helped with my confidence, I guess, because if someone doesn't accept me, then they just don't accept me, and I can move on with that. So it made me less anxious, I guess.
right. So, would you say that these precautions that you used to take earlier, would you say that they have become more like a subconscious part of your daily routine, or would you say that you have just reduced the amount of precautions that you take now that you're more comfortable in your identity?
Yeah, I think I don't think I'm as concerned with them really, or think about them much. Maybe after it was sort of a concern for a while, sort of a nagging thought behind my mind. But I have moved on from that. It has been like a almost a year since I came out. So
Right. So it seems like you are at a pretty good place in your journey
yeah,
towards
yeah.
self acceptance right now. That's wonderful. I am so glad to hear that. All right. So you mentioned that there have been no significant changes as a result of coming to terms with your identity, but like, have there been any minute changes, like small habits or little quirks that you've picked up over the years, like things, just like a little thing you do every day?
I mean, I have. Uh, there were some people who weren't accepting and maybe stuff
Right.
like that, but uh, not really. I guess not. Also,
All right.
I guess uh, when CNGs are like, before I came out, when I was wearing boys' clothes, I could sit next to the driver on CNGs, and now I can do that. I guess that's one thing.
Right. Right. Uh,
Nothing more than that.
All right, move on to let's move on from the personal to the political. Although, as they say, the political is the personal. But in your opinion, what are the most significant misconceptions or stereotypes about transgender people in Bangladesh, and how do they affect you and the community in general?
So, as I said, I think my experience is really a lot softer than what a lot of trans women have been through. I sort of lucked out on that. so I have been spared the worst of it. I mean, before I came out, when I lived in a village, that was probably my worst experience, and there was a lot of violence I experienced there. But other than that, I think people tend to view trans women and trans men in Bangladesh and also in other countries, like even in Western countries, as a singular gender. Like they don't understand that there are trans women
The
and there are
spectrum.
trans men and folks. Rather, everyone is come together under the word transgender. So I think
Right.
some people don't understand that there is distinctions like that. And when it comes to speaking about transgender people, it always mostly focuses on trans women specifically, and
Right.
under the assumption that trans men and non-binary people don't exist. And I think it leads to a lot of conversation that people have that wouldn't otherwise exist if people are aware about the existence of trans men and non-binary people, like about trans women in sports, or trans women using the bathroom and stuff like that. And there are other misconceptions that are existent, I think, not only in Bangladesh but in Western countries too. Like there is a alt-right movement to paint LGBT people as groomers and pedophile or creepy
Right.
people in general, which is like, uh, has spread all over the world. So I think particularly in Bangladesh, other than that, I can't really think of anything right now. So yeah.
So speaking of the mm, frankly dangerous misconception about trans people being groomers, again, I find it extremely disturbing that the same people who accuse trans people of grooming children or impressionable young people into a specific uh, way of thinking or a specific ideology, when these are the
They are all
very
from
same
marriages.
when these are the very same people who indoctrinate their children into religious institutions, for example.
They are also just, these people are straight up fine with underage marriages. Like
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you see, if they see a kid next to an LGBT people person, they're gonna scream, "Oh, they're grooming this kid." But when their conservative politician marries a underage kid, they're not gonna make a peep. They're gonna say, "Oh, it's natural." It's you know, uh, you can really
Absolutely.
catch them. They're hypocrites. They know they're hypocrites. They don't
I
care.
think the hypocrisy is very clear when you start to analyze how much heteronormativity is imposed upon us. When you see that a little boy and a little girl are playing together, and cishet adults will even jokingly say that, oh, are they boyfriend and girlfriend? Do they have a crush on each other? And I think that is extremely hypocritical, like to assign that sort of intent to children and find it acceptable when it is heteronormative, but accuse trans people of being groomers just because they want, children to be aware of the fact that they exist. So another thing that you've mentioned, being passionate about, is dispelling the myth that gender discourse belongs in the realm of privilege. That trans people are generally privileged people. Please tell us more about that.
Yeah, it's I guess it's just not applied to trans people, but the wider LGBT community in general. Like we
Yeah.
are affected by the Western mindset or something like that. Western influences affect us or some shit like that. But when you go into a lot of the LGBT phobic laws, like illegalization of gay relationships and stuff like that, when you check when they were instituted, you'll find that a lot of them were uh, put in the constitution by Western people, Western colonizers in our, you know. So like Western colonizers illegalized LGBT people in the countries they colonized. There were many cultures who accepted trans and LGBT people in general, which Western cultures actually use their acceptance of LGBT people as a way to dehumanize these cultures and call them savages or
Yeah,
pagan or heretics or etc. whatever. And when people often tend to tell me that you can be trans or LGBT in Bangladesh or South Asia, you should just go to a Western country. But or they'll say that you can change society. But the thing is that Western countries are tolerate their LGBT people. Not really, but the places or time they do tolerate. It happened because their LGBT people fought for their rights, right?
right.
Like culture is not inherently accepting of their LGBT people. Their LGBT people fought for those rights, and that's why they have those rights. And when let's say South Asian tries to fight for LGBT rights in South Asian territories, people will tell them that you are trying to bring Western culture into this. But the Western queer people who fought their rights over there, they were challenging their own culture. It wasn't like they were so respectful of their culture or anything. And this is the thing. Like people view culture as a monolithic thing, or something that doesn't ever change, something solid, rather than something that's affected to change by people at the hierarchy or people whose conveniences as it suits them, they change the culture. People don't realize this, so they view that our society as it is currently, with all its LGBT phobia, is the way that it always was. So now the Western countries, they in the surface accept LGBT people, but I have a lot of Western LGBT friends who have been kicked out of their families, or they have been gotten hate crime, or had their spouses hate crime, or I have one who has straight up trafficked into sexual trafficking. You know, so this sort of stuff, this lack of acceptance, it's relevant everywhere. So these people to act like Western countries are super accepting of LGBT people, but that's not the reality there. And people also have this idea that progress is inevitable. A lot of people tend to think that. So when you try to fight for your rights in South Asian countries, you'll often hear that slowly time will change or something like that. But time
Yeah,
doesn't really change slowly. Time change, or people progress, or society progress because we make it progress, right?
right, right, right.
um, yeah, so the thing is, in conservatives, they're always fighting to make society go their way, make society regress. But liberals, whenever society makes a little progress, they think that it happened on its own rather than the leftists or other activists who fought to make it happen. So this is the illusion of comfort that they have harbor, that time will automatically move forward without them doing anything. And when someone fights to make progress happen, they'll in fact go out of their way to quell the fight for progress without realizing that conservatives are working to regress society. And so out of this, the idea that LGBT people are simply richer or are urbanites, there's this idea that happens, that liberals harbor. And often a lot of them you'll see are rich people and urbanites themselves, the liberals who say that queer people are rich people and urbanites. And their conception of queer people as rich and urbanite, I think, stems from the fact that they are the only queer people that they may know are from their own social circles, right? So they don't know any poor
Exactly.
queer people or ones from
Right,
villages, right? Because they don't know any people who are poor and from
right,
villages.
right.
So it's like they don't know enough of the world, so they're just gonna look at their own social circle and generalize
Yeah.
the few people there,
And the
because
voices of the work, yeah, the voices of the working class have historically always been silenced. So I think
Yeah.
that plays into it as well.
It's
The
not like you're gonna
discourse,
find
yeah, the discourse is
you're not.
dominated by the privileged. So yeah, the misconception exists. Also, speaking of, like, I think queerphobia is actually one of the most harmful imports of colonization, because prior to colonization, in most regions of the world, queerness was a very important part of the social life and culture in general. So yeah, I too take issue with this tremendous misconception that queerness belongs in the realm of privilege, or urban spaces, or the wealthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that is a very interesting notion that you've raised, and I think it gives us a lot to think about, like the reasons why people feel this way, why this misconception exists. Um, so, have you encountered support from your family and friends regarding your identity? How has your social circle impacted your journey?
Uh, my family, some of the members have not supported it, but it doesn't really matter. Uh, I think I had way more support than I expected. I was expecting to get kicked out of my home and everything like that, but they've been generally accepting as best
Right.
as you could hope for, and especially my friends. My classmates, they have been really supportive of it too. Like, they're really cool about it. I think they took they were they were correctly gendering me and using my name right from the first day. Like, I made the post on social media. I went to university, and everyone was just cool with it. My teachers were mostly accepting too, so it was really nice because I think people in general have a tendency toward being kind, being kind to people and everything. And
Yeah.
I think the media, their punching of trans people, it's not as relevant here in South Asian countries. I mean, that is transphobic media, but it's much more intense right now in Western countries,
Right.
where right wing media is particularly giving the spotlight, negative spotlight to trans people, and that's not as intense here in Bangladesh. So, and particularly for me, I got lucky in a lot of cases. So yeah.
That's wonderful to hear. Also, one thing I have noticed is that a lot of people who have queerphobic views, these views melt away once they actually meet a queer person themselves. I think a lot of this bigotry comes from echo chambers, and because the people who are exposed to this sort of rhetoric, they never actually meet someone who is queer, who is trans, who belongs to the LGBT community. They tend to, there is this whole aspect of dehumanization. They do not see them as people, which is why I think colleges and universities are a great space for broadening your horizons, because you come to meet so many different people from so many different walks of life, and you realize just how much you have in common with them. And I think that slowly but surely helps in the process of breaking down the walls.
Yeah. And yeah, and I had classmates or people, acquaintances who used to share LGBT phobic posts before I came out, and they
Right.
stopped. And people progress. People have a tendency towards being good as long as they're not on the internet trying to get
Hmm.
those points or likes and reactions by making an easy joke about two
Right.
genders or whatever. No.
Right. 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 So I'm going to ask you. a philosophical question. Do you think people are inherently good, or do you think people are inherently bad and we are conditioned to be good?
Yeah, I think we are inherently good, mostly.
I agree. I agree. It's always good to see someone else have the same perspective because I believe people are inherently good. Because if you see a child, if a child comes across a queer person and they have not yet been exposed to any media or any rhetoric about queer people, they just, treat them as they would treat any other person. And I think bigotry is artificial, it is manufactured. No one is born a bigot.
It's it helps normalize the, I guess, it helps normalizing the economic exploitation of the working class, because you see inequality all around you. So when you see wealth inequality, you think, yeah, that's just the way life is. So it's sort of it gets created to make people think, people accept hierarchy as a way of leading their life. And
Right.
the ruling class, the capitalists, directly benefit from all kinds of bigotry and
Yeah,
war.
absolutely, they do. You mentioned that you have been relatively lucky in in your journey as a queer person, but
I mean,
also you did struggle with it initially, especially prior to coming out. And this is a bit of a heavy question, but did you ever in any way punish or torment yourself for, you know, feeling like an outcast or not having the answers to your suffering?
uh, not really. I mean, I did self harm as a result of the violence I faced when I lived in a village, or I guess when before I came out, when I was when I was in the closet. And but that's sort of separate from self-hatred, because that's a
Right,
result of trauma. But
right,
it's not exactly the same as self-hate. It's more of like a coping method.
right,
Uh,
right. So it wasn't as a result of internalizing their
no,
transphobia. It was more of a trauma response.
yeah.
All right. Okay. So, um, right. Okay. So, on a lighter note, tell us about a recent incident or a moment where you experienced gender euphoria.
I don't think it's really something that I experience a lot. It's sort of just normal. Like I don't really feel dysphoric anymore. So the
That's
euphoria
wonderful.
isn't. Huh?
That's wonderful.
I'm
I'm really happy to hear
so,
that.
so when you don't feel dysphoric, yeah, you don't really feel a sense of euphoria, because it's just your
Yeah.
normal day-to-day life.
Right. There's nothing to contrast it with.
Yeah.
All right. So we both have a shared love for Grant Morrison and their work. Did you know that they recently came out as non-binary?
Yeah, it was nice to see them finally come out.
It was great. The signs were there all along. It
Yeah.
was, I think, Grant Morrison themselves acknowledged that back then we simply did not have the vocabulary to explain how they felt, but now we do, and that has helped them come out as non-binary, which I think is just wonderful because I think Morrison has been a trailblazer when it comes to the fight for identity and individual liberty and freedom of expression of all sorts. So it was very affirming to see them come out as non-binary.
Now it
So
means two consecutive trans author writing the comic book.
I'm sorry. Please. I beg
After
your
their
pardon.
run, a transwoman wrote the comic. So it means there were two consecutive trans
Yes.
authors
Yeah.
writing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
She passed away.
So, so what are your top three works by Morrison?
Uh, mm, Invisibles, Flex Mentallo, and Animal Man. Yeah.
That's great. I have a copy of Flex Mentallo right there on my shelf. It's one of my favorite books, and also yes, it's.
Colored.
I'm
Which
sorry.
version?
Oh,
Which? Which?
would you like to see it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, just give
Sure.
me a second. Um, this is the book. It has
Uh,
some gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous artwork by Frank Quietly. I'm sorry. Oh, it has some absolutely gorgeous artwork by Frank Quietly.
is it the recolored version?
It is the recolored version.
Have you
Yeah,
read the original coloring?
I have read the original coloring, and I think they
Superb.
both have their own merits. But yeah, Flex Mentallo is an incredible work of meta narrative. But I'm more interested in your thoughts on the Invisibles, because the Invisibles, I
Uh,
think, was one of the first major Vertigo works which had a trans woman as one of the main characters.
I think I feel her name was Lord Fanny, right?
Yeah, Lord Fanny.
I think I feel conflicted about a lot of invisible storylines and characters, and I think Lord Finney is one of them. Because the trope of like being made to wear girls' dresses, or like being made to, I guess the word isn't really, being made to cross
Present a
dress
certain way.
is sort of like a trope in fictional media.
Right.
So Logan's character sort of has this. Uh, when she was a kid, she was made to not made, I guess. She was dressed as a girl by her parents, and she was comfortable with it. But
Yeah.
she didn't really, right from the beginning. It wasn't really her choice right from the beginning. She
Right.
chose it later. So this is sort of like a trope in fictional media when it comes to trans women. And this trope was, I guess, she wasn't portrayed as a negative character, but she was portrayed as a positive character. But you will see this trope in a lot of negative portrayal of trans people in
Right.
media. uh, it sort of implies that trans people are conditioned to be this way by their parents or
Yeah, it
whatever.
plays into the
So
grooming narrative a little bit.
yeah, so I'm not sure what to feel about that. I guess she's all of the cast in Grant Morrison's comics are really aspects of themselves. you know
Yeah.
Not all of his comics, but specifically Invisibles. Like they specifically put a lot of themselves into the characters. I
Right.
think has sort of some sort of magical relation, their uh, magical system in the one
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
believe in. Yeah,
Chaos magic.
like when the bold character, I forgot his name,
King
get
Mob.
tortured. Yeah, King Mob get tortured. They got
Yeah.
see themselves. And so it has a lot to do with their own personal experience. So it's not really my place to sort of say that, oh, I felt negatively about it, so it's not acceptable or whatever. But I do feel conflicted about that. And also, there's a part where she forgives her abusers. I think one of her abusers, after she was gang raped. And I'm not really. huge into forgiveness narratives, and
Right.
I think often forgiveness is really something that's scheduled out of victims,
Yeah.
as a way to give their abusers a pass. So I felt conflicted about that too. But overall, I do appreciate such an early inclusion. Uh, there are a lot of small things I feel conflicted about in Invisibles, but I do love it as a whole. For
Yeah.
example, in one of the storylines, I think they went to the past and brought back Desade. Am I pronouncing it right? Desade,
Desart.
you
Yeah,
know,
Marquis Desart.
brought him back to the present, and it's like Morrison chose to portray Desad as sort of like this anti-authoritarian figure who just wrote stuff like that. But he was Desad was straight up and noted abuser, like rapist and
Yeah,
pedophile.
yeah,
So
yeah.
he got watered down in the story. So
I
stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah. The same thing happened to John Lennon from the Beatles.
Yeah.
John Lennon was portrayed as sort of this, you know, revolutionary in the Invisibles, and I don't. I'm not going to say that the Beatles did not revolutionize the world, and John Lennon, of course, had like a tremendous impact on society and media and culture. But at the same time, John Lennon was a deeply flawed man, and I think these aspects of historical figures are sometimes a little lost in Morrison's works. But nonetheless, as you said, as a whole, I think it is a very solid body of work.
Yeah, I was, writing a sci-fi story a few years back, where this guy brings his son to a park where there are humans running around, and his son is at first, and they're supposed to kill the humans running around in the park, and his son hesitates to kill another human being, but his
Yep.
father says to his child that uh, you know, you can go back to school and brag about doing it. So the kid moves over his feeling of conflict and kills him. And after writing it, I got, wait a minute, I'm unconsciously ripping off Morrison's Invisibles. There's a similar storyline in Invisibles. I didn't even remember that bit of storyline while I wrote that story down. And after I wrote
Right.
it, oh, that was the movie, and I sort of
Right.
unconsciously ripped it off.
Right.
So it was affected a whole by their invisibles.
Right. Morrison's work has been always has been full of allusions to gender politics. Even Animal Man has allusions to gender politics, and all of this was long before gender discourse was part of the cultural zeitgeist. So
I
would you say I said that a lot of the gender politics that have been portrayed in Morrison's work, they were published long before gender discourse became a part of popular cultural discourse. So, would you say that any of these works in particular had an impact on your worldview growing up as you read them?
uh, I don't think they specifically had uh, as much a impact because I was born. I'm from a younger generation, and so the works that speak to me are written more recently,
Right.
like Gillen. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. Their book, I'm not sure about their pronouns, Karen Gillen. So their book, The Week That Divine. Have you read it?
I have not.
So it's about pop culture icons who are like avatars of gods and goddesses. So a lot of those characters are queer, and the way they carried themselves, they had a lot of them are really shitty people. They're good characters, but really shitty human beings. And but the way they carried themselves, uh, they carried themselves with a lot of uh, confidence, and they had, I guess, that leap, like they were iconic, and it it affected me. It, I guess, gave me a lot of confidence in being myself. Walking with your spine straight and keeping your chin up and stuff like that. Like this feeling of power that comes from within yourself. I sort of got that from that comic, and a lot of Alien comic books have this cool queer characters as well. And yeah, I think Karen Gillan's works have affected me the most in terms of comic books. Also, yes, Midnighter. Have you read his books?
I have read some of the Authority.
Which run did you read?
I read the I read the original. Was it called Stormwatch? The one in which Jenny Sparks is the leader of the team, and then there's Midnighter and Apollo. I've read that run. I have read Planetary, which is adjacent to the character of Midnighter, but does not directly include the Midnighter. And I read Morrison's recent work. I forget the name, but it is a book which has an ensemble cast of characters. It has Manchester Black, it has Apollo and Midnighter, it has Superman. It's yeah, but yeah. Tell me what you were saying about Midnighter.
Give me a second. I'm gonna need to turn on my fan. My phone is giving the notification that it's too temperature is too high. It may shut down.
All right.
So I'm
Yeah,
gonna turn.
yeah, sure, sure.
The noise might create some inconvenience. My fan noise.
Uh,
But yeah,
yeah.
Midnighter by Steve Dillon, that helped give me a lot of confidence too. One of the runs just titled Midnighter, and another, I guess, was Midnighter and Apollo. But yeah, I think Midnighter has had a questionable comic book legacy,
Hmm.
especially when Mark Miller was writing his. Mark Miller is a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so, but other than that, under Steve Orlando, uh, did I say Dylan before? Or did I say Orlando? But yeah, so Steve Orlando's comic book run on Midnighter is really good. And, you know, uh, he just exudes confidence. And
Exactly.
I think there's a particular storyline I like a lot, where Apollo dies, and goes to hell, and
Midnighter goes
Midnighter.
to hell to retrieve Apollo. I love that. I love that story. I love that story. I've read it. I've read
Uh,
it. It's incredible.
I was actually, before reading that, I have always wanted a story like Behula, but for LGBT people, that was a thing I always wanted to read, and it sort of scratched that itch, because it's sort of, I guess, not entirely like that. I'm sorry if it might be offensive, but uh, culturally inappropriate. But this tale of just going beyond death and bringing your loved one back, I love that one a lot. And I think Marvel's Wiccan and Hulkling, have you read stories with them? They're in the
Uh,
young.
Wiccan and Hulkling. Right. I am aware of the characters, but unfortunately, I haven't read anything featuring them.
Yeah, so those characters helped a lot in terms of finding representation in media too. Uh, I think Kyron Gillen wrote one of the runs. The second Young Avengers run, I think, was written by Kyron
Right.
Gillen, one from 2012, I think. So yeah, those characters, and in general, I think comic books have, comic books in terms of queer representation have always been more progressive than TV shows and
Absolutely.
film. Yeah,
Absolutely,
because
absolutely.
they take less budget to produce, so
Hmm.
there's less interference from corporate suites about what you can put in your work and whatnot. Even beyond LGBT people, in terms of politics, even
Yeah,
they have been more. Yeah.
I
So
think the
yeah.
British
Uh,
invasion played a huge role when when Grant Morrison and Neil Gaiman and Alan Moore and Warren Ellis, Garth Ennis, when all of them moved to the US to work in the comic book industry, um, comics have always been progressive, but these people brought like they breathed new life into the progressiveness. But even before that, the work of Dennis O'Neil and Neil Adams, the character of Green Arrow, for example, is Green Arrow is a socialist who gave away all his wealth, and I think such a character could only have the kind of legacy that he has in the comic book medium. But yeah, enough about comics. Have you read anything? Have you been read? Uh, you are studying English. Have you? What have you been reading lately outside of comics?
I read King Oedipus recently, Sophocles book.
Oedipus Rex.
Sorry.
Oedipus Rex.
Yeah,
Right.
the Robert translation, and
Right.
I think most people from our generation are acquainted with the myth or the story from second-hand hearing or like
Yeah. Yeah.
memes and
Cultural
stuff like that.
osmosis.
Yeah, so his story, we often come to view it as we often laugh at it. He's
it's
sort of
it's
a
seen as a people don't understand the nature of Greek tragedy and see it as a story about perversion when it is a story about a man who makes a mistake without knowing, and he the mistake irks him so much that he gouges his own eyes out. And I think it is a tremendous dramatic work. It is like I think the thing that sets so I think the thing that sets Greek tragedies apart from regular tragedies is that in Greek tragedies, the tragic character, the person who is a victim of the tragedy, they are usually a victim of circumstances. It's not because they actively do something bad that they suffer. They just like, wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah, and I was actually not expecting to be as affected by the play as much as I was because, I was laughing at those memes too. So when I actually read the play, it was pretty heart-wrenching.
It is a very intense play. Speaking of literature, you do write poetry. Would you like to share a short poem with us?
Uh, Let me see if any of these are. Let me find one of these.
All right.
Actually, Due Oedipus in Jocasta the other day. Is it visible?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That looks incredible.
Since let me see. Sorry, I can't really find anything on. The poems are on the device I'm using to chat with
Right.
right now. So log out of the website. I'm gonna
Right,
get cut off.
right, right, right. All right, no worries. But we'll we'll share your poetry we'll have you share your poetry with us at some other point when it's more convenient. But yeah, everyone is unique and has different experiences and perspectives. But if you had to pick one book that you think every young queer person should read, what would you recommend?
Um, I'm not really sure about young queer people. I don't. Mm, I can't really think of one for young people right now. But in general, if I had to recommend a book, I think it would be 20 Miles a Second. Have you read that?
I'm sorry.
Let me
Could you repeat? Could you repeat the name of the book?
let me look up the author's name. I have forgotten it. All right, I can find it. Sorry, I had it. It got deleted. But yeah, I think it was 30 miles a second. But it's about a queer youth who grew up in the streets, of a large metropolitan city, and it's autobiographical, and it contains instances from the author's childhood in the streets, growing up, and after that he had to survive the AIDS pandemic, and he saw his friends die, and he contracted AIDS himself. You know,
Hmm.
uh, the people. I'm
Uh,
sorry, am I?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I can hear. Please continue.
That was a really heart-wrenching story because he was looking at his friends die, and he brought his friends flowers in a scene, and his friends says to him, "I see double," and he says twice as many flowers, and it's sort of it's really it was really heart-wrenching, and see his how his sickness affects him, like being closer to death. He brings more of himself, pours out all of himself to his writing and the art he creates, because every art or piece of writing might be his last. And you sort of see how the devastation that that the AIDS pandemic had caused the community.
Right,
And
right.
which would you recommend if you had to recommend one?
If I had to recommend one, um, that's uh, that's something I have to think about. Um, well, it's not about queer people particularly, but for anyone who feels like an outcast or anyone who feels like anyone having trouble finding their place in life, I think the book "The Once and Future King" by T.H. White is a really good book. Um, it's a retelling of the story of King Arthur and Merlin, and it's beautifully told. Um, another
I just
book, um, another book that I would recommend is well, again, this is not exactly for very young people. It's because this deals with a lot of mature themes, but it's Narcopolis by Jeet Thai. It features a trans character in a very prominent role, a trans character who's struggling with addiction in a very prominent role. The whole book is about these addicts who spend their time in Mumbai. And Jeet Thayil, of course, is a poet, and this was his debut novel, to the best of my knowledge. But I think Narcopolis is a book that would open its readers' minds to a lot of things that they would never have considered in the first place.
I'll put this on my list, to read list.
I think
I
you'd,
found out.
yeah, I think you'd enjoy G. Thayil's writing, especially since you are also into poetry. And poets always have this when they write prose, they always have this beautiful way of, like, almost ecstatic way of writing, and I've always appreciated that.
I found out the book. I forgot the title of. It's 7 Minutes a Second by David Ujnaro, which I don't know how to pronounce that correctly, but yeah. Another book I would recommend is Days of Hate by Alice Scott. Have you read it?
I
It's a
have
good.
not. I have not.
So
But
it's about a Sapphic couple waging sort of their revolutionary actions against the state of America in a near future dystopia. And it's really good because it doesn't shy away from the consequences of terrorism, like a lot of innocent people get hurt, but it also doesn't really outright condemn political activities that may result in violence. And I think it's a really interesting work in the current political landscape. And I think another book that doesn't really have any LGBT characters, but affected me a lot in terms of how I approach the world as it is in its with all its LGBT phobia, is Mother by Maxim Gorky. Have you read that?
yeah,
Yeah. So there's this. It's a book about revolutionaries, and I think even other than the social revolution, on a wider scale, it also shows the protagonist and the ways the protagonist relates with abusers in his life and how he handles them. I think a lot of queer people who are especially in abusive households might feel emboldened by the protagonist uh, to sort of um, stand up against their abusers,
yeah,
because there's a scene where his father is about to beat him, and the protagonist Pavel, he picks up a hammer and he defends himself. And I think that scene really affected me a lot. So it's on my top book recommendation in general.
I think Gorky's work has this strange ability to inspire power in its a feeling of power, a feeling of strength in its readers. But moving on, you are a massive science fiction fan, right? And especially stuff to do with outer space. So Babylon 5 is known for having very intricate and well developed characters. Do you have a favorite character? And if you do, what aspects of their personality or journey resonate with you?
I think my favorite character is probably Susan Ivanova. But when it comes to stories about a particular character, I think that would be the doctor in the spaceship. I forgot his name, but there's a doctor, and he has two particular episodes about him that I like a lot. One is that. No, Babylon 5 is a space station where various alien species converge. So, an alien couple with their sick child brings the child to him so he can check what's that disease the child has. And it's a very, I forgot the exact name of the disease, but it's something very preventable, something curable, but it requires an incision to be made on the child, surgery. But the cultural and religious belief of the alien parents is that if you make an incision on the body of the child or anyone, their soul would go out of their body and
Right,
they would be
right,
a shell of themselves. So the doctor tries to change their mind, but they don't see his way. But if the surgery isn't done, the child will die. So the doctor goes behind their back and performs the surgery anyway. So the child is cured, and the doctor is thinks that everything has ended up well because of course they're just going to accept their child. But what they end up doing is ritually murdering their own child because
oh,
they believe the child is now an abomination, right?
right,
And I think that story influenced me, affected me a lot, because there are real people like anti-vaxxers
Yeah.
and those with similar belief system in our world. But also the story also speaks for parents who'd rather have a dead child rather than an alive
A
child
disabled child or a
who's
queer child or yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
in America right now, when it comes to accepting queer youth in school, there's a lot of talk about parental rights, like
yeah.
parents should, yeah, so that I think sort of relates with that story. And I think there was another episode revolving around that doctor. There's an alien species where there's a plague going on, right?
A
And
plague.
you remember the episode? The alien species, they believe in their culture that anyone who is moral is not affected by diseases or
Right, right.
stuff like
So an
so.
allegory for the AIDS epidemic.
Yeah. They all when the uh, plague sweeps through their spaces, they keep it hidden, because otherwise their
Yeah,
entire belief system would, or people in the higher ups who have this disease would be accused of not being moral.
right.
So they all, uh, although it has been the disease is being spread across their species, those who believe themselves to be morally pure, they don't seek any medical help. And instead of going to quarantine, they all huddle together and lock themselves in a single room, believing that if they just pray hard enough, the disease would go away. And so after a few, by the time the antidote to the disease is uh, discovered by the doctor, he goes to them and opens up the door of the room, and they are all dead. None of them survive. And yeah, the AIDS pandemic. I think James, the showrunner of Babylon 5, he was really affected by the AIDS pandemic. Like if you go through his works, you'll see this theme of plagues sweeping across people a lot. He had another show in the early 2000s about plague, I think. Let me check up the name of the show. Uh, yeah, Jeremiah. Jeremiah had a plague-related storyline, and a spin-off of the Babylon 5 show, Crusade, also had a plague-related storyline. And he recently launched his comic book line. I forgot the name, but in that comic book, too, the characters get their superpowers from a plague-related disease. So yeah, I think he was affected a lot by the AIDS pandemic. And Babylon 5 also has other LGBT coded characters. Susan Ivanova is pretty, Susan Ivanova is implied to be bi, I think. She has a lesbian relationship with one of the telepaths on the space station. And uh, it's sort of funny to me because they couldn't make it explicit, their relationship explicit back then. But a few years later, in the TV show Crusade, it's a spin-off of Babylon 5. There's a scene of the captain of the ship that the show centers around. He's watching lesbian pornography. There's a scene like that. You remember that? Like alien girls kissing. So that was really funny to me, because they can show girls kissing each other as long as a cishet character is consuming it as a pornography.
The male
But they
gaze,
can
yeah.
have queer relationships. They can make
Yeah,
actual queer relationships.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Ironic. I think that's something that is heavily subverted by Brian K. Vaughan's Saga. The
Sorry.
Brian K. Vaughan's Saga, the comic book.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that subverts the trope quite a bit with like well fleshed out queer relationships. Um. All right.
I think Saga also was one of the first instances of positively portrayed LGBT people I experienced
Yeah.
in media.
Yeah.
Uh,
For a lot of
there's
people,
a
I think.
hmm?
For a lot of people, it was. I think.
it was really nice seeing all those, because I wasn't really expecting all that when I went in reading the book. It was a nice surprise.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wonderful. All right. So, would you like a somber question to end the interview with, or would you like a less somber question?
Go with both.
All right. So, for the somber question, do you ever think about death? And for the less somber question, how do you feel about life and legacy?
I think death has had a major role in me coming out. Because
Hmm.
I came out after there was a flood recently. Not recently. Last year there was a flood in Sylhet. And my
Hmm.
apartment, the apartment we rent in with my family, it got knee-deep level of water, and
Right.
we had to wade through the water, and we moved to a relative's home. And the moment we moved to our relative's home, that place got flooded too, almost immediately. And the way that happened, there was we weren't really expecting it, because Sled doesn't get flooded often. And this I didn't really think my parents would survive that natural disaster. I was fully convinced that a lot of my family members were going to die, and I was convinced that I was going to die. I mean, a lot of people lost their lives during it. And I think it sort of knocked some sense into me, like, it sort of made me realize that I wasn't really living my life, and how close to death we are as human beings, and especially with the climate, you know climate going
Yeah.
screwy. uh, it ma- uh,
Absolutely.
uh, Thinking about death made me realize that I had to come out soon, because otherwise I would not live my life at all. So yeah, that affected me a lot in my decision to come out. So yeah, I'm not particularly fearful of death as much as not having lived my life before it.
Right. Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Sorry?
Um, yeah, right. That makes a lot of sense to me. I agree. I feel the same way as well. I don't fear death as much as I fear not living my life to the fullest. Which brings me to the alternate question: life and legacy. How do you feel about life and legacy with regards to your own self?
I'm sorry, I missed that. You would have to repeat. Uh,
Uh, but yeah, speaking of living life to the fullest, the next question, life and legacy. How do you feel about life and legacy when it comes to your own self?
I mean, I don't think I'm leaving much legacy. Yeah, I haven't built much legacy to leave yet. So yeah, uh, I don't think I've done anything with my life yet, other than coming out. And I'm looking forward to. I'm trying to. I hope I'll be able to leave behind a nice legacy. Create a body of work in science fiction. I'm hoping, and yeah, I think I hope I'll be able to leave something behind and give something to my community, because most people in my community haven't really gotten as much as me, or haven't been in the right place in the right time as much as me. So yeah, how do you feel about your own experience with it?
With life and legacy?
And that
With
too.
death, so I used to think about death a lot when I was a child. I had this intense fear of mortality. I was obsessed with trying to avoid it somehow, even though I knew deep down that, death is inevitable. I think in more recent years, I have read a lot of philosophy, especially a lot of Buddhist philosophy, and it has helped me see death not as a bad thing necessarily. Like, So there is this joke about how Western philosophers panic at the idea of nothingness, while Eastern philosophers find comfort in the idea of nothingness. And I think it is true to a large extent. Like, if you delve into Eastern philosophy, they talk about nothingness as the ultimate goal. Nirvana, um, the attainment of nirvana, freedom from the cycle of rebirth, just non-existence. And over time, that idea has become sort of like almost a welcoming idea in my head. And I'm in no way saying that I would like to die. I'm just saying that when death comes for me, I imagine it'll be like, just gently drifting off to sleep, a dreamless, long sleep. And as for life and legacy, I think we're both in a similar situation. We're both people who have their creative pursuits, who are aiming to leave their mark upon the world. And I think we are both going to make it. I am optimistic about that. And I would love to read a work of science fiction produced by you someday, Sahara. And it's been absolutely wonderful having you here. It's lovely. I love getting to discuss comic books with people. I especially enjoy talking about Grant Morrison's work. It has been absolutely lovely. So thank you so much for joining us today.
I enjoyed it a lot too.
All right.
Um,
Thank you for joining us, Sahara. To all our viewers, please like and share this video and subscribe to the Mesh for more upcoming content. And this is Roy and Sahara, and this is us signing off. Goodbye.